So to get started, what we want to do is we want to look at what basic shapes do we want to begin with. What's something that we can pick out of this reference image and get started with. And looking at it, we've got a couple of complex shapes and we've got some simple shapes as well. And for me, I usually like to block in something that's a larger piece that's not too complicated, but it gives us a good start on our object. And what we'll see is we have our cylinder shape and we've got this little cylinder piece back behind and that little cylinder piece back behind. And here we can even take a look at our reference image here. We've got a little cylinder right back in here, and this is where some of the bamboo, more of the brown bamboo, is going to sit. So we're going to create this structure right in here, and then we'll create the base, and then we'll probably tackle maybe the tiki doorway. So let's get started with that. So I'm going to just start off by left clicking and dragging and setting up the basic shape somewhere in here. So we're left click to drag to set the radius, left click and drag up to set the height of it, and we can see that we're somewhere close to about right in here. These are just some guidelines as references. They're not exact. So we get close, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be an exact representation of it. Now, we have to determine what kind of level of complexity or level of detail we want inside of the model. This is going to be more of a game style model, and because of that, we're not going to go too high with the number of polygons that we put inside of our model. In order to check out what kinds of, how to take out some of these segments inside of the cylinder, we can go to our inputs under our polycylinder, and we can look under our subdivisions and our heights and our caps. Right now we're subdivided at 20. Let's take this down to about 12. And then we have a subdivision on the height at 1. Let's take this up to, let's say, 3. Because this is a little more of a cartoony type shape, we don't want too many straight edges. We're going to want a little bit of a soft curve in the different parts of our object. So I'm just going to go in and let's see. We've got our subdivisions where we want them. Let's go ahead and go in and do a little bit of editing in here. And if you remember, we're going to right click and hold. And we can go into the different mode that we want. And we're just going to hover on top of the vertex mode. When we're in vertex mode, we see our vertices in there. I'm just going to left click and drag. I'm going to select R on the keyboard and go to my scale mode. And I'm going to hover on top of my little green spot right here. And I'm just going to push this out just a little bit. There we go, something where we have a nice little soft edge going around. That should do us just fine. And when we go outside of our edit mode, we're going to go back to an object mode. So right click and hold and go to object mode. So we are now in our object mode. We've got our first basic shape and we look good with it. And that's what we want, is we want some nice, quick, and easy accomplishments right in the beginning. Just kind of give us a boost and a good motivation as we're working on it. So we've got the basic piece of our tiki hut, and the next little piece that we could work on one of the little bamboo pieces if we wanted. Let's go ahead and put a bamboo piece in. We're going to be working with a cylinder again, and I'm just going to left click and drag to set the height of it. And you can tell that we're somewhere about right in here. There we go. We'll zoom in a little bit on our object. There we go. And from the looks of it, like bamboo, we're going to have some little inset pieces where it gets darker and then it goes back out. So it's got a nice little shape to it. So we're going to go into our inputs. We're in our channel editor. We're going to go into our subdivision, and again, we really don't need 20, so we're going to bump this down to about 8 for this one. Our height segments, we could go ahead and drop 2 in there if we want to, or even 3. Let's go 3. There we go. And with that set up, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to want to do some editing on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on my object, and let's go ahead and go into our edge mode. I'm going to left click and drag. And then let's see, I'm just going to want, whoops, I'm going to our view over here, spacebar to capture that really nice. What we want is just this little guy right in here. So we can shift click there and whoops, make sure we hold our alt as we're doing that, and then control left click to make a selection. So we can add to our selection if we want, control click to get rid of the selection. So right now I've got these two rings selected, and what I want to do is we could do a chamfer on those two rings. We could also just use our other tool and actually just set in new edge loops on both sides of it. So it depends on how we want to do it and what we want to do with it. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect just for the fun of it. We'll start off with just this ring right here, and then let's go ahead and do something with one of our edit tools. If we go to our, if we remember, we've got our mesh tools, our edit mesh tools, and then our mesh tools. Our edit mesh tools, we have something in here that we could use. If you take a look in there, we have options for our bevel, our bridge, our collapse. We have something in here that lets us split our edges up, and that's what we're looking for. Now, I could take you right to it, but this will give you a chance to kind of take a look and see what's available to you. We also have our connect tool, and that lets us connect selected edges together and connect them through the middle. And take a minute to look and see what you can find with it. Alright, so if you guessed it, we're going to be using our bevel tool. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my bevel. I'm just going to go into my window options. And then we're going to go in here and we're going to say how much width do we want this to be separated by. Let's say somewhere close to about 0.2, and we're going to want at least one extra segment in between the middle. And when we get it to where we want it, just hit apply, and there we go. We've got it beveled out and looking good. Gives us a little piece in the middle so that we can shrink that in. Now additionally, down here at the bottom, we could take this one and we could do the same thing, or we could look at it and say, well, what other options do we have available to us? If we go up to our mesh tools, we'll do our show modeling toolkit. We've got our tools over here for our bevel and whatnot that we can use, but then we also have inside of our mesh tools, we have our create, let's see, our insert edge loop tool right here. So I'm just going to left click on this one, and I can drag along an edge and set one in, left click and drag and set. So a couple of different ways to approach it. Both ways work good. It's just kind of up to you on deciding which way you want to pick. Alright, so I'm going to go back over here to my front view, and I'm just going to select on this middle one here, and I'm going to use my scale tool. I'm just going to scale this guy in just a little bit. There we go. And remember, we're going for a little bit of a cartoon appeal and feel to it. There we go. So we have the basic in, the set in part. Now we can also go into our vertex mode, and let's say we wanted to adjust these pieces. We could pull them in and out. Gives us a chance to make sure that we're getting comfortable with the tool set that we're using. I'm going to go over, since I've got my modeling toolkit set out, I'll just go over to my edge selection here. And let's say I make a selection of edges here, and I want to connect right across the middle. I want another edge loop, so I could do a connect here. It's going to give me an edge loop right in there. And we'll say with that one, we like that. And we'll connect it there. And then let's add one more right up in here. There we go. Now, what can we do with that one? Well, let's say we select on these and we're just going to add a little bit more shape. We'll take this one, we'll just push this out just a little bit. Maybe thin that one up some. Maybe thin that, and we can thicken this one up a little bit. We're just playing with that silhouette, playing with that shape that's there. And with this one, we have a little bit of an upturn on that, kind of like it's been cut just a little bit. So we're just going to grab that and slide, rotate that around. So let's go back over to our perspective view. There we go. So we've got a nice looking little piece of bamboo going right now. Now, of course, we could go in and add a whole lot more detail in there, but it's not necessary, as the texture is going to handle a lot of that for us. So the last part of this would be to make some copies of this around. And for right now, we're just going to stick with the one, and then we'll do an unwrap on it, and we'll get it all prepped and ready before we start making copies of it. Okay, and next up, we'll start working on our little doorway, and we'll do that next.